you, everybody, very much. Hi, welcome to the 10th episode in the series SEO is SEO. Today we're going to talk about machine learning for digital marketers. This is the topic I know least about from the entire series. So hopefully Lexi, Purna and Stephen are going to be able to fill in and really give us some insights, and especially me, I'm going to be taking notes throughout the episode, I think. So first of all, thank you, Lexi, Purna and Stephen, for joining me.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Great. We'll do
You're welcome.
Thank you. We'll do a quick introduction. We'll start with Purna, who I met 15 minutes ago. Very briefly, I met you at Brighton, I think. If I understand correctly, you started off as a producer on TV. Is that true?
I did. Isn't that strange? So I started off in journalism. I actually studied in Cardiff. I did my journalism degree there, moved to America, worked for PBS, which is our public broadcasting service. I worked for like the smaller station in Philly, and I produced a live talk show, which was, I got to meet fantastic guests like Deepak Chopra or like Nobel Prize winners like Wangari Maathai. It was a cool job, yeah.
Wow. Ooh. I mean, if you hadn't ended up being head of something very big at Microsoft, I would have said you should have stuck with that because it's really exciting, isn't it?
I liked the world. It paid absolutely nothing, and so I could only do it when I'm like really young and I'm fine. But then my son was born, so I had to find a different career. My son was born with health issues, so I couldn't live the life of a TV producer. So I moved over to PR, and I somehow discovered search, and I'm in love with it, and this is where I am.
You moved to PR doing Pet Plan. So you were into pets for a
way
while.
before then. So yeah, I was at Pet Plan for a little while, but no, I moved to do PR at a small agency in New Jersey, and then very quickly, my best friend in London was working for some agencies, and she worked for AOL in London as well, and she told me all about this cool world of search and said, you should try it, you'll like it. I'm like, what is this thing called SEO? What is this thing called AdWords? Let me test it out. And this is like 2006, 2007-ish. And since then, I went to my CEO, I'm like, can we try this? And he said, give it a go. And that's history, yeah. And
now you've ended up at Microsoft, and you're 2018 young best ever person in the whole universe or something like that. I can't remember what the prize was. But it was right impressive.
By Adweek, which is super cool. But yeah, it's great. I mean, look, Microsoft's a fantastic company to work for. They have such a good vision. I drink the Kool-Aid, and I'm proud of it. Like, I love Satya Nadella, everything he stands for, and the things that we're doing for good. I love all of it.
Brilliant. That's really groovy. Now on to Stephen, who I've also met. I think I met you at Search Leeds, your super duper conference in Leeds.
You did indeed, yeah. And both Lexi and Purna spoke this year, so that was awesome. Good to catch up with everyone, as always.
Yeah, I saw Purna speaking. And your history is literature and Shakespeare. You did Shakespeare in Sheffield, which I think sounds incredibly good as an alliteration.
Yeah, funnily enough, actually, while I was doing my master's in Renaissance literature, that is actually where I started learning about machine learning. So there's a story in there.
Which Shakespeare play was it in?
It wasn't actually Shakespeare. So it was a manuscript called the Devonshire Manuscript, which was written by the court of King Henry VIII. And a lecturer at the University of Vancouver by the name of Ray Siemens was using machine learning to try and determine who wrote what in this collection of poetry. So some of it was written by Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife. We don't know which bit, so he was using image recognition to try and work out, who does their S's in a certain way, as well as various aspects of text mining to try and work out what kind of language Anne Boleyn might have used versus anyone else. So it could be that she was a fantastic poet, and it could be that she was completely rubbish at it, but we just don't know until work like this is done.
That's brilliant. So you managed to slip machine learning into your literature. I mean, I remember I come from a literary family, and there is this whole debate about who wrote what, and can we truly attribute writing to the people we think we should attribute it to, Shakespeare especially.
Absolutely, yes.
Brilliant. And to move this on, I also hear I saw that you did a special talk on Ireland, and that Ireland is an incredibly mobile country.
Yeah, that was for Learn Inbound at the beginning of last year. So I think it's quite interesting. You know, I think everyone here has done Learn Inbound as well, right? So it's a very interesting country compared to the UK. There are slight differences, and I think that's probably the key difference. Believe it or not, the Irish are way ahead when it comes to mobile adoption.
Cool. There you go. Well, I thought that was interesting. I lived in Mauritius for a while, and they're very far ahead in mobile adoption because they didn't have landlines. Or a lot of people don't have landlines. So the first thing they do is buy themselves a phone, and their first telephone number is a cell phone. So that's I'll try not to say anything rude. Lexi, moving on to you. I saw you did degree 3, the 3 degrees at Brighton.
3D design, yes.
Oh, sorry.
But I did do 3 courses actually at the same time. But
and you did...
one of them was 3D design.
Okay, sorry. We were talking last week about people who did phenomenal courses in studying, and you did night courses, and then as far as I can see, you had a full-time job at the end as well.
Yeah, I did. I mean, you could automate a lot of stuff at university. I would just go put my iPod on the lectern and then have a little nap and then go for a lovely walk and listen to it. I'm not very good at sitting in a room where you can't interact. You know, that's what's beautiful about search. You know, you've got all these data points that keep you interested. But someone just talking at me, I wasn't very good at that. But that meant that I could go and do another course, and then listen to my lectures later.
Brilliant. So, I mean, in fact, I get the feeling that everybody who's on this webinar series at some point during their studies was using technology. Stephen just came up with an astonishing example. You've just come up with a less astonishing example, but a very practical example. And then I hear you moved on to working with race courses and motor racing.
Yeah, well, I left university. I got my dream job. I did it for about 2 months and realized I hated my dream job. So then I, for a very small period of time, ran an eco-funeral company for someone. And then after that, I got into music, mainly because I wasn't very good at getting up in the morning. And music management you could do through the evenings. And I was very poor, really, really struggling to make ends meet. And I started to see how much money we're spending on print and distribution. And that's when I was like, well, I can design stuff, not well. I'm not the best graphic designer, more like a Mac operator. But once I had the files, I could start spraying them around the internet. And once you start spraying them around the internet, you work out what works and what doesn't. And
then you get a job.
Then you get a job. And then, of course, with anything you want to scale, and scale with music seemed like bigger and bigger events. So I'd done music. So then I went to horse racing and motorsports.
Brilliant stuff. Really good. So I'm a musician, Purna was a TV producer, you're in the music industry, and we all discovered that the way to actually make a decent living is to do search. So we're going to move on to search.
Segue. If my PR clients could segue that well, I'd be very proud.
Well, I've been practicing for a few months doing this series. So welcome and thank you, Lexi, Purna, and Stephen for joining me. As I said, this is something I know little about, and I'm really excited to learn. One thing I did look at very quickly is I like this graph because it shows how much machine learning or AI has advanced over the last kind of 7 or 8 years. That nice kind of descending graph shows phenomenal improvement in image recognition, at least, and I assume in other fields too. I also found this, which shows a widening gap between the number of people who can actually do the job or do machine learning and the number of posts that are open. I read somewhere it was like a Black Friday in Walmart when you're at these job fairs. So if anybody's in search and they aren't making enough money, move into machine learning, they're making apparently 6-7 figure salaries. So that's to motivate people if they want to change job today. Don't go back to music or TV producing. I found this diagram, which I quite like. I don't really know what it means, but the idea that artificial intelligence includes machine learning and that deep learning neural networks are kind of one part with supervised, unsupervised learning, reinforced learning. Then I found these nice definitions. I found this one from David Amelin that I don't understand. Artificial intelligence is the precise or explicit description of functions and presumably hardware so that it can simulate human intelligence, while machine learning is aimed at helping machines learn on their own and perfect their operations, so it could be more correctly called machine intelligence. I hope that makes sense to you guys. I found this one, which is a bit simpler. The term AI is aspirational. I really like this idea. It's a moving target based on those capabilities that humans possess, but which machines do not. So they use the example of a calculator in the 70s would have been artificial intelligence at the time. It now seems very simplistic. So that's this moving target of things that machines, so humans can do, but machines cannot. A calculator would be a very good example. Today, we're moving forwards with other stuff that presumably in 20 years' time will look like kind of terribly simplistic. And machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, just one of the many ways you can perform AI. Machine learning relies on defining behavioral roles by examining and comparing large data sets to find common patterns. And I think he forgot what this guy said, is that instead of writing code, you feed data to generic algorithm and it builds its own logic based on the data. I like that too. So I've brought together several ideas about what machine learning and AI are, and I've asked Purna to tell me what the difference between AI and ML is, because I think I've just made a big hash of it, haven't I?
No, you haven't. And look, if you think about it, of course, there's confusion right around AI because it's not something that you can see or touch. So you don't even realize. I think many people are confused because it's not something that they see, but it's something that they are even using every day that they don't realize it. So if you've ever done a search in Bing, or if you ever used a PowerPoint presentation or dictated a text in your phone, you were probably relying on intelligent technology. So I would say let's break it down a little bit. The term AI essentially refers to this broad range of technologies that can perceive images and sounds and understand them. It can learn from these inputs and interactions, and it gets better over time. And it is able to reason over the large amounts of data to identify patterns. So if you think AI think of it as the larger, broader umbrella. Machine learning is one subset of that, which tends to use these mathematical models to go ahead and understand and reason over vast amounts of data. My colleague, James Whitaker, actually says it really well. He says, AI tends to be stochastic. It's like the way real brains work. It can bounce from different ideas. It can go in different areas. There's a lot more random, but a lot more intelligent. So things like different neural networks, different connections, just like our brain does. Machine tends to be because it's based on numbers and patterns. And so hence it is slightly different. They are not interchangeably used. So that's a good thing to keep in mind.
Super. And what about Microsoft? You were talking about that earlier on. How were Microsoft using AI? I think you were talking, I found it, you were talking about, hold on, I've got to read this. The 4 C's of conversational design: clarity, character, compassion, and connection.
I think we should go a little bit higher than that. If you think about what this intelligent technology can do for us at the highest level, it's helping us be smarter. Like human beings, we're pretty good. We have lots of these unique capabilities. We can be creative and all of that. But what we have done historically over time as well is we've used technology to amplify and extend these capabilities. When we, in like the 1400s, if you think about books, it was only the monks who would write them. They were handwritten. Knowledge was limited to the hands of a few. Then the first printing press came out. So we used a form of technology to democratize learning. So then books could reach everyone. When we only got around with horses and animals, and we created cars, we could go greater distances, and so on. We've always used technology to sort of solve our greatest problems. And here too, we see that happening now in this new age where, especially with search, where we want to connect with different audiences, and there's just so much data being produced every day. How do we use it to make the most? I think that's a big key question. And AI is also used for good. There's so many great ways that it can make things more accessible. For example, we have the Seeing AI app, which it was created by one of our engineers based out of London, and he created this app that is for people with who are seeing impaired, and it helps them right almost so that they so if they're at a restaurant, it can read the menu to them. If they're walking around and they hear a sound, they can just press a button on the phone and it tells them what it is. So that's so empowering. I think it's a great big equalizer.
Yeah, I mean, the whole accessibility question was something we looked at earlier on, the fact that people or website owners are not really making enough effort for that. And this whole accessibility issue really comes to the fore with voice search. And I think I read something you were saying about that, the conversational idea of search and allowing people who are sight impaired to be able to access, or any other kind of disability. That's really brilliant. And it actually, part of what you said leads on to what Lexi said to me the other day, which I really appreciated. The human mind struggles to hold more than 3 points at one time. Machines don't. Much ML is an automation of what's a somewhat manual process flawed by the nature of humans. Can you explain that, Lexi?
Yeah, of course. So it's kind of interesting in PR. If I'm asked to PR something and I can describe it as an elephant app, you know what an elephant is, you know what an app is. So putting those two concepts together, you get an idea of what I'm talking about. What I love about advanced technology communications is that you're actually trying to tell people now that something is a combination of like 4 or 5 things. And basically the human brain just goes, nope, I'm not doing that. We just can't put more than 3 concepts together at one point. We can't hold them there. And that's a great challenge. It's a challenge from a comms perspective, but it's a challenge across all areas, from medicine through to, there's some amazing algorithms that help match up kidney donations and things like that. But realistically, we want to take advantage of all these data sets, all these different disparate things, and our minds aren't capable of it, but machines can do that. And we can decide that we're capable of working out that we want to put those together, and then we get the machines to do it for us. So it allows us to kind of be superhuman, which is pretty exciting.
Brilliant, superhuman. Oh, I like that. And also the fact that you said 3 points at one time, I don't know if that's scientific, but my friend from Dewsbury, Dave, who told me how to present, or he told me how he teaches A-level students. And he said, I always have 3 points. Even if I've only got 2, I make up the third one, because 3 always really gets into the kids' brains. So everything I've done on this series has been in 3s. And I do find it is very effective, not just for the people I'm talking to, but for me too. It makes it very easy for me to remember what it is I'm going to say. Super duper. I really like that. Now we're going to move into the practical part, which is where I'm going to get lost. So it's the practical part of how we as marketers can use machine learning to our own advantage. I like to think of that of using the beast against the beast, as it were. I saw this, which was tweeted by Stephen a few days ago. Machine learning improves conversion rates from 40 to 200% in our research. Obviously, that's a very global statement that doesn't really mean very much, but the idea that we can use machine learning to really improve our own performances as marketers is very interesting, and Lexi touched on that earlier on. So first question to Stephen, are there any search-specific ML tech we should be aware of, and how are organizations using it today?
So I think going back to the diagram that you showed earlier, Jason, where you've got this kind of box of AI, and then you've got machine learning as a subset of that box. I think there is this box of machine learning tools that are available, or rather the tools that the people who make those tools say have got machine learning in them. And then you've got this little box of tools that actually use some form of machine learning, which is much smaller. And although most search tool providers are using some form of machine learning, or certainly trying to, I think the most interesting machine learning technologies in the industry are not in the industry, so to speak. So obviously anyone from Microsoft through to Google has plenty of machine learning tech in their stack. Everything from, DoubleClick, as it was, Google Marketing Platform, etc., uses huge amounts of data in different ways to provide you with better indications of what could be going on and allowing you to make that inference yourself. I think Mark's tweet earlier from HeroComp, where he was saying that between 40 and 200% increase in conversion rate based on using that technology. He's talking about a specific proprietary platform, but it's not too dissimilar to what the actual search engines would be using. And obviously, this is PPC specific as well. So to really get to grips with SEO specific machine learning tech, actually, you are going to have to look outside of that industry. And there are plenty of other tech tools available that I love to use in an SEO context. So I'll give you a couple of examples, like starting from a really rudimentary one. There is an email platform called Phrasey. So that's phrase and an extra E. And what Phrasey does is it ABC multivariate tests email subject lines on your database to determine which words are most likely to result in a click-through or an open in an email. And now that's really interesting because you're using an email database of people that clearly know you because they've opted in to receive your email comms. So this is your target audience. And then if you're using that tech to then create PPC ad copy, for example, or you're using that tech to create anything from title tags to meta descriptions, you can massively improve click-through rates from people who are likely to be your target audience because they are, you've tested it actually on that type of person or people in that demographic. So that's an example of where, my agency's background is definitely in email as well as search. We can cross-pollinate using that kind of technology. I think the other really interesting applications when it comes to tech would be around forecasting. I think that's probably the biggest challenge for a lot of SEOs, where they are trying to determine what's likely to happen next. And, we tend to reach for data that is very much within our comfort zone, or certainly within the silos that we tend to work in our organizations. So you will potentially be trying to forecast what's going to happen next month when it comes to traffic and conversions based on seasonality, sure, but you're looking in your web analytics platform. You're looking at data in that silo of Google Analytics or whatever analytics platform you're using, and you're not factoring in, for example, whether you were on TV at that point, or whether you had an outdoor campaign in that particular area, or what the website looked like. So there is a huge amount of data that is not factored into that one silo. But a lot of that data does live in, say, for example, your CRM. So you can definitely layer behavioral data, demographic data onto your analytics data to provide better forecasts. And a tool that we tend to use to create those forecasts would be something like Data Robot. And Data Robot is literally a platform that just uses different machine learning models to try and determine what's going to be the most accurate forecast based on what's come before it. You can use all sorts of data, lots of which are freely available. So in the UK, we have the Office of National Statistics. So we can start to layer on data such as, what's the economy look like? Do people have money in their pockets? Are they spending at the moment? Are things going up or down? What's the weather like at any particular time? And layering on everything from your TV schedule to what's going on with your email campaigns and any other campaigns that are going on. You can't do that manually. Exactly as Lexi says, you're looking at 3 data points in your head max. You need a machine to be able to actually combine that data in a meaningful way.
Yeah, brilliant stuff. I like the email example. I think I might actually use that for one of my clients. So thank you very much. I really like that. I mean, I tend to look at things and try and figure them out for myself, and I'm obviously wasting my time and would do better to actually get some machines to help me. And we have a question about that later on, but I'll wait for later on for that one. Next, we're back to Purna. Where do you think search marketers should use ML? I mean, you actually gave me the examples of analytics, personalization, and multisensory. I'm not sure what multisensory means, but please go ahead.
Of course. Well, I think I loved Stephen's examples. I mean, those are brilliant. And it's such a good example of when we think about turning data into insights, of course, from the analytics side as well. But if you think at it at a higher level, just finding these greater efficiencies, and finding the clues in all of these massive amounts of customer data signals, that's only possible with these sort of AI-enabled analytics solutions to find some of that data. So if we break that down a little bit more, or actually, let me give you an example first. I was reading about this. This isn't something that I've personally worked on, but I was reading about it online, I think in like Ad Age or Ad Week, and it talked about what the Pizza Hut. We all know Pizza Hut, but their franchise in Hong Kong is called Yum Brands. So for their Pizza Hut, they were trying to analyze all of the different channels to find out where customers were super happy, where they were unhappy, like what would they need to fix. And what they initially found was that people who order pizza from their mobile apps it had a low customer satisfaction rate. So at this point, they were trying to figure out like, why is it wrong? And I think if I had been in their shoes, my instinct would have been like, what do I need to fix in my app, right? Because we turn to that as the first step. But they pulled all of this data and put it into this AI application, and it analyzed all of these sums of data. And they actually found that people were unhappy from that channel because they didn't know how long they'd have to wait when they picked up pizza. So it was very variable waiting time. So nothing to do with the app itself. It was more to do with the experience at the store. So based on that discovery, they were able to add on these e-tickets. And so that way people knew exactly how long they would have to wait, and then satisfaction rates went up. I mean, that's really brilliant. It's like you would not have been able to find all of this by looking through all of these different data points if you didn't have an AI-enabled platform there, anything with machine learning to look at that. So I think we're going to see for us as marketers, as search marketers especially, we're going to see ourselves becoming much more data-centric, yes, but that doesn't mean we're going to have to spend a lot more time running all the reports. The analytics tools are getting much smarter, so they can do a lot of these things automatically. We can even talk to it and be like, hey, what was my click-through rate for this campaign 2 years ago, and like what was the other factor at that time? It could pull in different trends. Another good example of data into insights is something that we have at Microsoft called the Microsoft Graph. Now, if you think about it, great AI needs great data. And something Microsoft has been doing is building this repository of data for years to develop this rich user understanding to able to help deliver this better set of services for the end user. So, for example, it includes things like world knowledge, work knowledge, people knowledge, through things like pulling in all very high-level data, nothing personally identifiable, but based on things like search history, like brand preferences, LinkedIn data, information from your office, or all of these different, like your Office 365, sorry, not just your work office, that account. It puts it all in and ties it together. So you can get a much more well-rounded idea of a person, so you can develop messages that are just far more personalized. And to jump into that second point, I think our own tolerance levels for irrelevant advertising, I think it's going down and down. Like we're not willing to put up with those experiences that we had even 5 years ago. It's changing so quickly. Like I want things to be about me. I want it to be helpful. I don't want it to be distracting. Like we've developed this turn. So if you can do that, you can deepen your customer engagement, you can increase brand loyalty. And if you understand the customer, you can understand how to speak to them. And then AI even gives you the tools to reach them. For example, in paid advertising, we have things like in-market audiences that identifies this group of people that are in the market to buy something. So if I advertise to them, it's just much more relevant messaging to a better audience. And then, of course, if we think multisensory, we can think of things like voice and image, right? It's not just those old days where you typed in text into a little search box. It's more than that. I could be walking down the street and I could take a picture of the shoes that somebody's wearing, and I'm like, I really like them. Where do I find them? And so, for example, we have that in Bing, and I know Google has something similar now with Google Lens. But within Bing, you can search from within an image, and then what it will do is it will pull up results of things that are similar to that, so you can go ahead and quickly find your path to purchase. So these are just a few different examples of ways that AI can really, really help you. And if you're looking for some of the tools and the features that can help you tie to that, I mean, just quickly off the top of my head, there's things like, there's Power BI, which is great for data visualization. And you can even talk to it and ask it to pull in data from different subsets. You can find ways to automate your paid efforts with like bid management platforms and things like that. You can reach different audiences in a better light. You even have things that tailor your ad copy, like dynamic search ads, that again, all of these things can help create it on the fly based on the comprehension that search engines can have.
Yeah, it's nice you should mention the dynamic search ads, because I've been using that on Google for a while with great success. As an SEO professional, dynamic search ads are absolutely perfect for me. I can optimize the site for the SEO and then switch across to dynamic search ads and save myself absolutely loads of work. And Bing just allowed me to do it in France. You wouldn't let me do it before. And it's actually going really well. So I'll little plug there for Bing ads. The DSA on Bing is going incredibly well. And the other thing is, back to multi-sensory, I had heard, and I think what you said is on Bing you can go to a detail of a picture. Google Lens maybe isn't doing so well with that. And the other player I had heard of, and is this true, is Pinterest.
Yes, Pinterest has, like, I think something called Shop the Look, if I remember correctly. And even Snapchat has Snap to Buy. Even Amazon, I can shop by image. So I can just take a picture of my water bottles if I want to buy, I want to reorder my set. I'm like, here's this, it'll find it. So in that case, it's even training us as an audience. If in all the daily apps we use, we can search by image, then we'll want to be able to do that even in our search engine. And we can too.
Yeah, and I mean, all this technology is changing, the way that you guys are putting it in place. This technology is changing the way we act. And as you said, we're all very tired and impatient when an ad comes up for something that we're not interested in. The great example is when I've been looking for a microwave oven and then I bought it and it still shows me ads for the microwave oven. That drives me absolutely crazy, especially when it's ads from the person I actually bought, the company I actually bought the microwave oven from.
Well, didn't you want to start a collection, Jason, of microwaves?
I love cooking, but I don't love cooking that much.
I click on those ads out of principle. If someone targets me, I'll click them a few times. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant! I'm going to start doing that. That's a great idea.
Small victories.
That was absolutely brilliant. And just one thing, I'm just going to cut in now to say that if anybody's got any questions, please do ask them. Stephen is kindly looking after the questions, because I don't know in this topic what a good question or a bad question would be. So Stephen's looking after that. He's going to pick up the questions and he's going to ask the relevant people, including himself, the questions at the end. And we're going to try and keep 10 minutes for that at the end. I'm really interested to see what you guys are going to ask. We've already got one question in. It'd be great to see some more. So next, back to Stephen, talk to the devil, not literally. How should you go about setting up your business to take advantage of an ML? Please, Stephen, tell me.
I think Purna hit the nail on the head, right? So there's a great article on Harvard Business Review, which is titled aptly, "If you're not good at analytics, then you're not ready for AI," right? And I think that's probably a good way to view the world, right? So I view machine learning and AI and the difference between them as machine learning is you train a machine on data sets and it allows you to spot patterns more readily. It allows you to make decisions more readily, whereas AI tries to make those decisions for you. And if you're going to let a computer make decisions for you, then you are going to have to get a lot of data in one place talking to each other. And the percentage of organizations that are ready to do that anywhere in the world is less than 1%, less than 0.1%. There is disparate data in every single different marketing platform, even in the biggest organizations, right? So you've got CRM data that potentially doesn't necessarily talk to web analytics, that doesn't talk to risk databases if you're an insurer, that doesn't talk to any number of different kinds of databases, right? So allowing a machine to make decisions on your behalf with that is never going to work. So I think the logical starting point is genuinely to start pretty small. And you should be looking at maybe one data set and then saying, if we added in this kind of data to our data set, so one of the questions that come in, right? So has anyone on the panel leveraged deep learning for marketing, PR, SEO, etc.? A great way to start with this, where we originally started with this particular topic, is we took our web analytics data, we took who is the converting audience, and then we layered in CRM data. So the percentage of our customers who are a particular demographic and live in a particular area and use a particular device and use that to create our personas. And then you can start to layer in third-party data as well. So we would layer in TGI, for example, which is a media platform. It allows you to find individuals' media preferences. So on a PR perspective, you take that web analytics data and find your best converting audiences. You layer in your CRM data to find out Who are those people? What do they? What is their family status, for example, if that's something you ask? Where do they live? What kind of device do they use? But more appropriately, how often do they convert? How much do they spend? Are they frequent purchasers? Do they always purchase from you, or is this a one-time thing? And then when you've got that audience of frequent converters, you start to layer in that media preference and say, okay, so our frequent converters tend to read this type of publication, or even they read this exact publication. They read that publication, they're interested in these particular hobbies, and they watch these particular TV shows, for example. And then when you're looking at PR, which is obviously something that Lexi knows a lot more about, actually doing these things than I do, you can start to say, okay, so our campaign should definitely look like this, and it should definitely go to these sorts of journalists. And that way, not only are we potentially avoiding an argument about domain authority and metrics that don't really mean anything, and how do we prove the value of a link? Because we can say, we know that this link is valuable because we know that this percentage of people who spend this much money with us read this publication. So regardless of what Google wants, and regardless of what Bing wants, and every other search engine, we can say that people who are interested in our brand and genuinely buy from us read this. So that makes it a lot easier to avoid loads and loads of complicated SEO questions that no one can really answer.
Okay, so I mean, but if we're using AI and ML within our agencies to help with our marketing efforts, it's helping us to make decisions without having to argue with each other on non-data-based stuff. So it's very much like GPS stops couples arguing in the car about which one to go.
Actually, can I jump in super quickly before I pass it back to Stephen? I find this is a very common confusion point when I talk to people. They're like, how do I start using it? I'm like, well, wait a second. You probably already are using it, but you don't realize. And we're so scared of the unknown. But I'm like, well, think about it. If you're using any kind of like automated bidding system, like a Target CPA bidding, you're already using this. It's a great start. You're saving yourself time. Now, where else can you save time? So sorry, just a quick cut in. It's like you're probably already using it, and it's just take the next baby steps, like Stephen is saying. So anyway, back to you, Stephen.
Sure. So I think that's a really good point, right? So there are plenty of tech solutions that are incorporating this, and we don't know about them. But what's really interesting about this whole marketplace is the number of solutions that are out there that, you know, are really struggling for clients as a starting point. They have an idea. They think if we have this kind of information, then we could do this with it. And that's where I would start, because we've had some real success with trying to find a solution that does something that we might have an arbitrary idea about, and saying, we could be a case study for you. Let's negotiate. Let's talk about how we could do this cheap. Because everyone is looking for a proof of concept right now. Unless you are Bing or IBM or Google, you know, you don't have the scale to be able to do all of that stuff and prove it. So that's usually a really good starting point for us. And it's literally just, it comes down to, we have this data. If we had other data to compare this against, what would we do with it? How would we start with that? And then there is usually some form of tech out there that does that particular task for you.
Yeah. So I mean, we've all got loads and loads and loads of data. Applying machine learning to it is gonna enable us to make decisions more easily. It will be cheaper, probably more accurate, and will avoid us having arguments with our colleagues, which is great. And as you say, I mean, there are a lot of solutions out there, and I think people are asking to name specific ones. Obviously, we can come up with some, or you guys can come up with some, because I don't know any. But that would be useful towards the end. Now over to Lexi. I know you're specialised in a particular industry, and you have some interesting insights into machine learning and the future of the health industry for SEO, or I'm going to call it AEO. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I specialize in PR and SEO, putting the two together, and I've kind of worked both sides. So I love data, but I love people. And I think, you know, just going back to what Stephen was saying, there are some amazing solutions out there, but there's also a point where you have to recognize where technology is not the answer. You know, knowing when to say no to something is important. You know, when is a human touch still required? I mean, the role of the human in a world of artificial intelligence is a beautiful discussion for an evening, but we'll not go there quite now. But we are seeing a lot of AI being used in publishing. And the PR industry, our job is to target journalists. And I think it was yourself who referenced knowing who reads what publications. That's really helpful. What's even more helpful is knowing how they use language. So if we look at something like SwiftKey, we did a PR stunt for them, and we sucked on all the Queen speeches, and we made a version of SwiftKey that allowed you to text like the Queen. It basically translated everything into Queen speech. But you could do that for your customers. You can learn how they speak. You can learn how a journalist speaks by looking at their writing, and you can start, we would be able in the future to be able to target a journalist with their own language. And it's not, there's an argument about whether that's manipulative or not. From where I stand, if someone was speaking French and I could speak French, I would speak French to them. It's a matter of politeness, and I think we're going to see a whole etiquette change come out of this, which is incredibly exciting. It's going to be a moral dilemma, then an etiquette change, and then something really beautiful. We're not, time is our greatest currency, really, at the end of the day. And all automation since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution promised us time. But now it's promising us value. It's promising us smoothness of interaction, language that we understand, adverts that actually add value. And that's really interesting when you look at publishing, because now you can speak to a journalist and a journalist can speak to its audience and just by using machines to understand what they want. So a lot of publications already use AI or machine learning, somewhere between the two, to tell them what they should be covering, what keywords, what are people interested in, or what gets clicks. Same thing, right, to a large degree. And then we've got journalists now automating article creation. Now, this part really excites me, and we use this a lot internally. So we're not actually using AI within the agency to do this. We're understanding the AI that's being used by others. So we know that in business and finance, especially in the US, a large proportion or a significant proportion of articles are auto-generated by machines. And that means that we have to not just pitch humans, but we have to pitch machines. So we've worked out what feeds the machines, and we make sure we deliver our news in that way. And some of it is newswires, which I know to SEOs, you're like, oh, not a newswire, because they've been so badly discredited when it comes to SEO, because people use them to build links. But actually, they're going to have a little bit of a rebirth, because if that's the way to pitch AI, you want to do it. But from my perspective, getting AI to write up articles in finance and business makes sense. Those press releases are fairly standard in terms of their structure. So telling a machine what it needs to look for and to pull different bits together and automating an article, probably it's not rocket science. I'm pretty sure it wasn't easy, but it's not rocket science. But it's a manual, it was a manual process that's been automated. There's another manual process. When you need a statistic as a journalist, credit card debt, figures in America, you type it into Google. If you get the smart answer, that's probably the result they're going to go with, right? They're going to cut and paste that into their article. They'll make sure it's a reputable source, but they're not doing any more than that. Well, to me, it seems completely rational that they're going to automate that, so that if you have P0, you'll continue to have P0, which means we should really be fighting to be ready for smart answers, because it will become a self-perpetuating loop of SEO signals. I'm sure the algorithm will catch up and do some tweaks, but there's going to be a nice chunk of time before then where there's going to be a lot of money and a lot of knowledge to be shared. So I think it's kind of exciting looking at where that AI is going, and it's certainly something we focus on. I'd say maybe 20 to 30% of all our strategies have some element of smart answer built in, so our clients are ready for that, because I don't think it's that far away. Brilliant.
Great stuff. Thanks. I really like the idea. I mean, this whole thing about talking the language of the person with whom we're trying to dialogue. I see my new client sites, they systematically talk from their own point of view. And then you say, we need to talk from your client's point of view or your potential client's point of view. And they go, okay, fair enough. And they start thinking about that. And you say, and you've got to use their vocabulary, not yours. And using AI to be able to actually do that more effectively would be amazing.
Well, you'd be able to illustrate it. You'd be able to say, here is the deviation between how you speak and they speak. And then you could take that factor and translate it forward. And you could say, so this is what they hear. So you'd be able to actually give them the experience of being miscommunicated with and have the emotional response. And the emotional response is really important because we love to think of ourselves as logical beings, but we're very emotionally driven. And AI will give us the opportunity to challenge that, not just with clients, but their audiences as well.
Brilliant. I've got the meeting with the client in 3 days. Do you think I could build something that will prove it to them in that time?
So I work in PR. If you can make it look like it's working, it's working.
Totally good. Okay, great.
It's the best answer I've heard.
I hope the client isn't watching. Thank you very much. Next, back to Stephen again. Machine learning. Sorry, can you trust the search engine's own ML platforms to do the right thing for you? We almost touched on this earlier on, and we're looking at DSA, for example, but Purna mentioned, can we trust them? The minute I am.
So I think, and you know, Purna is very much a PPC person. So I don't know how much she'd agree in comparison to Bing, but I would say that the job of a PPC person is to limit Google's ability to make decisions on your behalf, because Google makes the right decision for Google every time when it comes to PPC. You know, you're serving an ad that might, you know, meet the metric that you're looking for, but it also is meeting other metrics that Google's looking for as well. I think the best example of this is when you're looking at Isaac Asimov's book, I, Robot, right? So there's the first law, which is never harm a human, and the second law, which is protect yourself unless it conflicts with the first law. So machine learning, according to Google, is number one, do what's right for Google. Number two, do what's right for a user unless it conflicts with the first law. So in a short answer, no, I would be pretty careful about letting the search engine's own ML platforms just run. You know, it's absolutely advisable to use them because they are genuinely a lot smarter than we are, but it's also absolutely advisable to keep a really close eye on them.
Okay, that sounds like very, very good advice. Sorry, somebody was going to say something?
I was going to say that I think this actually exists from a Google user perspective as well. You know, Google serves this efficient answers, but and efficiency is helpful if you type in how to boil an egg, right? Great answer. But sometimes efficiency isn't actually healthy. And it's optimized so much for efficiency that some of the searches are actually becoming unhelpful or unhealthy. And I think that has to change. You know, I did a talk earlier in the year where I spoke about a search I did, which was around lung cancer survival rates. And it gave me an efficient answer. Smart answer, survival rates. I ended up having a panic attack and fainting and mildly groping a train official as I fainted. She was not best impressed, and nor was I. Google gave me an efficient answer. If it has access to all my data, it should have known that actually, it should have said, first answer, call a friend. These are all your friends online. It wasn't healthy. My relationship with Google wasn't good at that point. And I think the sites that start to optimize for healthy answers will encourage the search engines to start to think about how do we give people not maybe what they want as fast as they want it, but maybe we give them what they need. And that's a slightly different approach. So I don't think we should trust the search engines to give us what we need, whether it be on the ad side of the platforms or even on the interface that we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And that's certainly something that has to evolve over time.
Okay, super. So give us what we want or what we need is the question.
If I can just quickly jump in. I say that, fair points. And I think what we have to remember is that this is just the tip of the iceberg with this technology. It's all so new. We're just scratching the surface. It's not there to replace us, even in PPC, if we want to, do we just let the machine run and do it? It's an extension of you, so you should always watch it. I mean, it has been designed to make life easier, to save you time so you can really focus on what matters, which is the customer. Like, you can bring in the human side more, the human touch to do that, as long as your time is saved. If I'm not wasting hours on or at the start of the month for reporting, or if I'm not spending hours managing bids or like writing ads for a million different things, I have the time to focus and think about it. So yeah, all of those are valid points, and it's all going to be it's all designed, that the AI and all of the tools have to be designed to do no evil. And that's, I think we see it. It's not there to replace us. It's there to help us where we count, and we can manage it. So it's all in respect to the human.
Yeah, I read somewhere along the line that ML is a little bit like cooking. I mean, with cooking, you've got ingredients, you've got kitchen tools, but you need to have the talent to actually put them all together to make something delicious. And in AI or ML, it would be maths, data, and intuition. And it's the person who's saying, well, it's this particular formula, with this particular mathematical formula, sorry, with this particular application to the set of data that I have, which is going to make it really function for me. So my understanding of that is that within ML, the human aspect is never very far away. Maybe that's overly simplistic and optimistic of me.
No, that's a great analogy.
Oh, I picked it from somebody else, so it's not mine.
I also think we have to give AI and ML a chance to grow up. As Purna said, it's in its early stages. I remember my mom giving me some paints and some paper and left me to play. And she said, paint your face. So she meant paint a picture of my face. Well, when she came back, I had painted my entire face. But was she wrong to say paint your face and leave me with the paints? No, we have to forgive ourselves for some of the learning that has to happen from our side when it comes to building this technology. And sometimes it can be funny, and some of it's really insightful. And we learn a lot about a particular data set or different types of people. But we have to have some level of forgiveness whilst we're rearing a whole new level of technology. It's just not going to be perfect straight away. And, the kid's going to paint its face and not the paper now and again.
Great. I love that. We need to forgive ML and AI to allow it to grow. Thank you, Lexi. Now, next is the position 0 question, which was kind of dropped a little bit. We have our 12 points list, which I won't bother reading because you can pick up the slides afterwards. It ends with Cindy Crumb's example of Fraggles, which comes along with what Jonah Alderson was saying about blocks of content. Now, Lexi tells me that she has some super ideas for using ML to get position 0 and what that means for the future of a website's ranking.
So I've been looking at what are the frequency of terms, because you can plot using the same machine learning and AI tools that publishers use. I just use a hash of SEO tools to do this, but we plot internally at the agency seasonal trends, so things that we know happen, and then we segment them by industries, and then we look for repetition. So what things happen every week, every month? I mean, and this used to be done manually. Let me be quite clear. This is not rocket science on my side. I did not come up with this idea. I just came up with the idea of using some tech to help with it. And what we do is we look at frequency of types of articles. So actually, it's interesting you're wearing glasses. We have a glasses client. And I was like, right, let's find every place that glasses are featured in a publication. And this is really interesting because when you start to look at this with a machine mindset, you see glasses in places that normal PRs wouldn't pitch to. So that's starting to build us a strategy of all the opportunities. Then we look at all the keywords that we know are going to be relevant. And then we go back to the client side, look at the historical data of what's worked with regards to link building and traffic and social signals, because we know all of those are feeding into the algorithm. And then we look at this whole map and just say, right, there, and there. Those are the key focus. So you use it to build a strategy, but you're using it to build a strategy that you know will get more links. And then you start to code the pages appropriately so that you're answering key questions. Because that's another thing, actually, a friend of mine built this awesome spreadsheet. And you just put in your key terms and it gives you all the auto-suggest questions. So good for beginning ideas or building out a PR idea. And answering the questions that your clients have. What a great way to sell. But it also helps that you can get the P0 results and they will become self-perpetuating because you can look at the questions clients ask and the questions journalists ask, front code a page so that you can answer both on the same page and then get yourself to a point where one of those can be a smart answer.
Brilliant stuff. Great. And one thing that did strike me, and I wrote it down as you were talking, was start using a machine mindset And that's something that strikes me. It's even if I'm not using machine learning, because I'm learning about machine learning, I'm starting to think in a more logical way, in a more analytical way, and maybe just studying the idea of it is already moving me forwards, at least in the way I'm thinking about things. My small theory at the end there.
It's always a good idea, I think, to remove restrictions, even if you, even if there are some. So I often say to my team, if you had $1 million, what would you do with this for this client? And then we work from extraordinarily unreasonable back to practical. But the other day I started to think, because we've got this rocking intern in at the moment, she's absolutely fantastic. And I was just sitting there thinking, what if I had 1,000 of these? How would I care for them? Would I be able to give the same caring, training, introductions? But also, what would we do with them? And that was at the beginning of a sort of a machine mindset with when it came to resource. So it's kind of fun to play with. I recommend it just as a after work beer conversation. If we had 1,000 of this type of person, 1,000 of that type of people in our firm, what would we do, or what would they be doing?
Okay, great. 1,000 seems to me to be quite a lot, but then I'm all on my own. So anything over 1 seems like a lot to me. Thank you very much. That was absolutely brilliant from everybody. Lexi, Purna, Stephen, I've learned a lot, and it's changed my way of looking at how I'm going to approach this. Stephen, have you got any questions from the audience before we wrap up? I can see a few coming in.
Yeah, one that I particularly wanted to answer, given time constraints. Simon asked, can we utilize machine learning to understand what users will ask in future rather than relying on what they've asked in the past? And I think let's get practical for a second, right? So I've mentioned Data Robot a few times. I've just shared a link for an alternative. So using R, we mine a lot of text. So text mining is a principle that's been around for a long time. Text is not easy to use in this kind of context because it's free data. So it's literally, it could be 100 words in a conversation. It could be 1 word, and it's not necessarily easy to tie that text back together. So we use text mining in Data Robot, and we pulled together, firstly, social listening data. So we use Linkfluence, but you could use Crimson Hexagon or any number of things. We use reviews data, so Google My Business data, or Yext is a favorite of ours as well, pulling in reviews data. And we use call tracking. So we record calls for some of our clients using something like Response Tap or Call Tracks. And we pull all of that data into one place, and we find common words. So you could do this in literally something as simple as a word cloud, and find all of the common words, the common problems that people have when they are venting on social media, when they are venting to a customer services agent, or when they're writing a negative review to say, our customers have a problem with this particular thing that we would never have found out about because we don't get that analytics data anymore. We don't get the keyword data as we used to. We don't necessarily see all of the impressions that we get. So pulling all that together in a tool like Data Robot and just creating word clouds gives us a really good indication that we wouldn't have otherwise got about what people are actually asking to people that are, again, in these siloed, disparate parts of our businesses. They're literally picking up the phone to ask these questions because that kind of content isn't on the website. And the search volume isn't there for it, but that's because there is no way of tracking whether the search volume is there for it. So that's one easy way to, I say easy, right? It's not necessarily super easy, but there is a step-by-step way of doing it live now with minimal use of tech to pull that kind of information together.
Yeah, I mean, understanding your clients or your prospects through their social interaction, phone calls, I hadn't thought of that, but that and reviews especially, really, really interesting. And the idea that you can get a bad review and that it's a terrible, terrible thing is saying, well, actually, it can also help me improve and give me a good idea of how people are perceiving it. Super, I like that. Have you got any more questions that from the list other than the how can it help with Brexit?
I don't know if anything can help with Brexit, but far-fetched use of machine learning that's already in use. There's obviously anything, right? Anything using machine learning is pretty far-fetched at this point. We are pretty out there when we're coming to the application of it. One thing that we've done, so I've mentioned IBM a bunch of times today. Watson is a tool that we use quite a bit. So we trained Watson to recognize what homesteads look like on a map of Tanzania. So the reason that we did that is because Tanzania has a real problem with female genital mutilation. We work with the British Red Cross and a charity called Missing Maps, trying to find ways that we can distribute humanitarian aid more efficiently, because we just don't know where people live. So we took some aerial photographs of Tanzania and trained Watson to recognize what a house looks like, so that we can quickly determine where all the houses are on these aerial photographs of Tanzania, so that we can plot some form of map and get aid out there more easily. So that's not really a marketing application, but I think, you know, it's maybe a little bit different, but it's definitely something that we couldn't have done without a tool like Watson, without machine learning.
Yeah, no,
So,
I think I read an article about that. I think that's brilliant. Sorry, Lexi, I interrupted.
no, it's an incredible thing to have been able to do. Yeah, I'm going to have to ask you to show me that. We've been working on something over here. We have a foundation attached to the agency which looks at mental health. And what we've been doing is tracking patterns in online behavior to be able to predict mental health issues ahead of time. Now, at the moment, that project is called EK0, and that's the first section. But the next section of it is my personal aspiration, and I don't know how we're going to get to section 2, but we will get there, is working out, okay, could someone turn something on and say, I want healthy advertising? So that if our algorithm can recognize before you're having a breakdown, like way before, when you're just a little bit stressed, and it can read your calendar and it knows you've got 2 hours between meetings, it knows there's a meditation class starting in 5 minutes, and that you can get there in 5 minutes, and it starts to surface you adverts according to things that you actually want to aspire to do and that will help your mental health. And so in that sense, there is a great future from both diagnosis, prevention, and a real benefit of surfacing products that people want and need well before they know they need them, in a way that will actually be helpful. Because, you know, when you're having a panic attack in the corner, that's not the time to be told to go to a meditation class.
No. But I mean, health comes up a lot on the ML question. I mean, Paul Woodford was talking about health as well. Last week we were talking about health. It would seem that this idea of doctors and illnesses and diagnostics is something that machine learning is going to be very powerful, and we can already see it coming.
You see it in China, actually, where there's extensions of doctors that will take in information from patients first and give it to the doctor, so that way they can be more efficient, especially in remote areas where there's thousands of people to one doctor. So having a machine to scale that is quite cool. Isn't that fascinating? I wanted to drop one resource for the audience, because I think everyone's asked really good questions. And if you want to do some of these amazing things like what Lexi and Stephen are doing, you can take yourself to AI school. This is a really, it's free online. You can tailor your own path in whatever area you're comfortable with. It's just aischool.microsoft.com. That's a really handy resource that I've personally found valuable. So I hope others can as well.
Hey, that's brilliant. I think I might actually go and join that. Maybe before Friday I can get my AI diploma and impress my client, or else I'll use Lexi's advice and just pretend it works.
No. It has to look like it's working.
Oh, sorry. I don't just have to turn up and make it up. Jolly good.
Don't use the word pretend. We don't fake it, we make it in PR.
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong job. No, I'm in the right job. Sorry. Great. With that, we'll end it. That was absolutely brilliant from Lexi, Purna, and Stephen. Thanks a million for coming in and talking to me about something I knew nothing about.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Anytime.
Super duper. Thank you. And now, just to finish off for next week, we're back on safer ground, for me at least. How does rank brain affect query results today? I don't know enough about it, so I'm going to ask Omi, David, and Doc to tell me much more than I probably need to know about it. Between now and then, I'm going to do some research. Please do join us next week, same time, same place, Tuesday, for How Does Rank Brain Affect Query Results Today? Thank you.